So again, thank you everybody for joining this morning, this afternoon, whatever time it is, wherever you're tuning in from. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day, maybe stepping away from the bench, or maybe you're sitting at the bench tuning in at your computer, either or. It's really great to have you here. Very excited to speak with you all about the OsmoPRO MAX, show you some of the exciting new things that we're bringing to osmolality testing with our first fully automated instrument. First, before we jump into that, just a couple of housekeeping things. If you would like to ask any questions, there is either a Q&A or a chat in the Teams window that you're using. So feel free to, in the chat, put any questions that you might have. At the end of this presentation, I should have about 10-15 minutes or so to answer any questions that you might have when I return back to my computer here. As the presentation goes on, though, I won't have access to any of those questions, but we do have a few colleagues from Advanced Instruments, or the future Nova Biomedical, on the call here as well, who might be able to address those. But for the most part, I'll tackle those when I finish the presentation. So who's speaking? Who's the voice behind this blue screen? My name is John Flasher. I'm a senior clinical product manager here at Advanced Instruments. I'm responsible for the osmometer product lines as well as our anoximet product lines here at Advanced Instruments. So who is Advanced Instruments? Well, we've been at this a while. We're a leading developer in scientific and analytical instruments, consumables, and services. We're dedicated to increasing productivity, hence the fully automated osmometer, and ensuring quality in both the biopharma space as well as the clinical space. And we've actually been in the food and beverage testing industry since our genesis back in 1955. So we were founded first as a distributor, and we utilized this freezing point depression technology, which is what your osmometer does when it's taking a measurement, primarily for dairy testing. So in the dairy industry, there can be different things that can be introduced to the dairy supply, the milk supply, maybe water, that can change the osmolality. So as a QC measure, we often test milk and other dairy products to ensure they're fit for consumption and fit for distribution in whatever country they're being distributed to. But we, in partnership with some nephrologists, with the experts in the field, identified some broader uses for freezing point depression technology in the clinical space, but also in the industrial end markets as well. So we introduced the osmometer and we rebranded our company as Advanced Instruments. And since we've established ourselves as a gold standard for osmolality testing, leveraging that freezing point depression technology. So that's a little bit about our background. Most recently, we have acquired Nova Biomedical, so you might be familiar with them through your point of care testing department or critical care analyzer utilization, blood gas analyzers. They've been a long-established player in that market. I'm super excited to be joining forces with them. And you'll see an announcement for a rebrand coming up here in just a short couple weeks in mid-October. So something else to look forward to as well. So here at Advanced Instruments, though, at least for the next couple of weeks, this is what our global reach looks like. So we have headquarters in Norwood, Massachusetts here, which is actually where I'm presenting from, near Boston, Massachusetts. Our Artel products are manufactured in Maine, so just north of Massachusetts. And then our manufacturing for our Solentum portfolio, or another one of our key bio products, is actually headquartered in Wimborne in the UK. And we have some other offices globally, and then we have direct sales in several countries in Europe, as well as North America. And then we have key international countries that we distribute to really globally, a huge global reach for our products, as you can see in the areas represented by the dark blue. So what is it that we focus on from a clinical perspective here at Advanced Instruments? The first that we're going to focus on today, primarily that one all the way there on the left, are our osmometers. So these belong in the chemistry department, as you all know who are on the call, who have maybe stood in front of this osmometer on the right, the Osmo One, and ran your tests one at a time. I'm going to show you a much cooler solution here on this presentation that I think you'll find really interesting. Another thing that's near and dear to my heart, as a medical laboratory scientist by trade who spent about 6 years on the microbiology bench, is our Inoxamat 3 anaerobic jar system. So if you're using those gas packs, maybe you have that little blue indicator strip. Is it going to turn white? Is it going to stay blue? Did I create the environment? This is kind of a way around that conundrum. Provides you some reliability and a bit of peace of mind around ensuring that you create the exact environment, either anaerobic, microaerophilic, capnophilic, or any custom environments that you want every single time in as little as 5 minutes. Next, we have the GlowSight automated CSF cell counter. So it is exactly how it sounds. This is a really cool tool. So if any of you here on the call have ever sat in front of a hemocytometer and looked into a bright field microscope and counted total nucleated cells or red cells, this kind of takes away all that variability and interpretation. Similar problem that we had to solve, not too long ago with something like a hematology analyzer, right? We want to take away that manual method, remove that variability and result interpretation, speed things up, and take away the human element so that we can ensure our results are accurate. Another great thing about that GlowSight automated CSF cell counter, it's the only automated cell counter that's going to give you a linearity down to 0 cells per microliter. You're not going to find that with any other automated cell counter. And then, of course, we have our BR2 bilirubin stat analyzer, oldie but a goodie. Still very important to make sure we're, testing the bilirubin, total and direct bilirubin concentration for those babies. All right. So that said, we're going to stop sharing. And we are going to go ahead and kick off the demo here because we're here to talk about, hold on, I just have to pin myself on the screen so I can see what I'm doing. We're here to talk about the OsmoPRO MAX automated analyzer, which is what you see on the screen here in front of you, or at least what you should see on the screen in front of you. So here I am again, John Flasher, Senior Clinical Product Manager here at Advanced Instruments, responsible for osmometers and Inoxamat product lines. And that's what you're seeing here is our newest fully automated osmometer, the OsmoPRO MAX. Everything over here on the right is what you'll typically see from a consumable perspective for this instrument. So what's great about the OsmoPRO MAX is when you get the instrument delivered, you order a convenience kit to make sure that you have everything you need to get the instrument up and running and run a few tests in the meantime. You're going to get everything you see here. The primary consumable for the OsmoPRO MAX instrument is going to be this Max 500 maintenance kit, our OsmoPRO MAX maintenance kit. As you can see by what it says right here, it comes with 1 bottle of system fluid, 1 vial of enzymatic cleaner, and 2 replacement tubing lines. I'm going to show you exactly what that means in a little bit when we get to that part of the demonstration. But what's great about this kit and what's great about this instrument is you can continuously test from primary sample tubes. So any of those tubes that you typically get sent up to the laboratory for serum and plasma, they can be lithium heparin tubes, gel separator tubes, your red tops, your SSTs, whatever you get, it's going to fit on this turntable as long as it's shorter than 100 millimeters tall. And it is going to allow you to put those tubes on and take them off as they complete testing. And you can continuously do that. No batch testing. You can keep putting tubes on and taking them off until you hit 500 tests. When you hit 500 tests, you just have to change out the system fluid, which is the blue stuff over here. You have to change out the peristaltic tubing lines, which are really easy. They're under these black covers over here. It's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, as we say here in the States. And then run an enzymatic cleaner through the system. The enzymatic cleaner is a pepsin-based enzymatic cleaner that's going to just clean out that fluidic path, make sure that our flow-through system is staying clean, and ensuring that we completely mitigate any risk of carryover because we know we can't have that in our chemistry analyzer. Another thing that's great about this OsmoPRO MAX is this calibration kit. So with this starter pack, you're also going to get a calibration kit. So the days of individually purchasing all of your calibration standards are over. This comes with a 0, a 300, an 850, and a 2000, and an ampule opener. So a little ampule opener to ensure that you can crack these vials open without risk of that glass breaking in a way that you don't want to. What's great about that is the the calibration process is fully automated on board the OsmoPRO MAX. I can show you a little bit about what that looks like later on as well, but there's no more standing in front of your instrument, pipetting your sample, loading it into your Osmo One, getting your result, doing that 3 times for every level and just standing there and doing it through the whole time. With this one, you can utilize these great ampule adapters to ensure that you are putting the ampule for whatever calibration standard it is that you're running through your calibration protocol, and then loading them up per instructions that are actually going to be available to you in the software on board, and then hitting start and walking away. So while the instrument calibrates, you can be taking tubes off of your chemistry analyzer or calling that stat result to the doctor, or depending on how large or small your lab is. I worked in a much smaller laboratory on the weekends, only 67 beds. I had to do a little bit of everything, coag urinalysis, blood bank, having something like this to kind of take the burden off of your technologist or yourself, depending on who's tuning in, is really, really valuable in a busy laboratory environment like ones that we've worked in. What else are you going to get? A linearity set. This is going to be really important for my North American folks on the call. You'll get the osmolality linearity set. We actually run that as part of our installation, validation, and training package for you. Also with the method comparison, if that's something you're interested in moving forward with. And then, of course, Clinitrol 290. So if you have osmometers from Advanced Instruments, probably do, you're used to running Clinitrol 290. Clinitrol 290 is recommended to run on the instrument every single day. We also recommend, but you are not obligated to, but strongly recommend, because these ranges are going to be much tighter. They're going to replicate the reportable range that you would actually see in a patient, if I could speak this, not enough coffee, for osmolality results. And they also have compatible ampule adapters to make running these tests really, really easy on board the OsmoPRO MAX. So we have propanol, which is our protein-based matrix. So it's meant to mimic a serum or plasma sample. We've got results from 240 to 320 with 280 right there in the middle. Renal, much broader range, because as you know, depending on what you're testing urine for, you can get results that are really, really low or really, really high. So for renal, we have 300 and 800 milliosmol standards for daily QC on those as well. Additionally, you can get these tubes. So we do sell these 12 by 75 millimeter tubes, primarily for if you have the need to run a small volume insert, which are also going to come with the starter pack, with the convenience kit that you get with the OsmoPRO MAX instrument. So these small volume inserts are going to be really important for your short draws, maybe pediatric samples. The minimum sample volume that you can run in the small volume inserts are 190 microliters. So 190 microliter minimum sample volume on this instrument. And out of that primary sample tube, you're going to need at least 480 microliters, but it's only going to aspirate 190 microliters, right, to accommodate for that dead volume, so that the liquid level sense technology can do what it does and make sure that it's properly aspirating sample from your primary sample tubes without doing things like running into gels or bumping into the bottom of the tube. So super important that we accommodate for that dead volume so that the instrument can do its thing, so you don't have to pipette. The instrument does it for you. Okay. That said, I think the next thing I want to do is go ahead and show the group some cool features within the user interface, because I think that is one of the most impressive parts about this instrument. So we've talked about the automation and the value of automation and how we can leverage that automation to make things more efficient for us in the laboratory, which these days, let's face it, is becoming increasingly important. I've been in the lab for many years. I know what it's like to be short-staffed and have to do a lot of different manual techniques, especially me coming from the microbiology laboratory. Especially those days, we were relying almost exclusively on manual techniques, with the exception of a few molecular instruments, which helped us along the way. But having instruments like this that can help free up tech time so that we can do other things more efficiently and more confidently without kind of rushing through the very important things we have to do in the lab is so, so, so valuable. So let me take you through first the main screen on the user interface here. So the first thing you're going to see on the bottom left here, and you can't really see my finger. Oh, there it is, popping up down there on the bottom left-hand side, is your test counter. So remember, I said you needed to change that Max 500 kit every 500 tests. That's really the only user intervention that needs to happen on this instrument in a 500 test cycle. And it's going to count down from 500 each time you install a new Max 500 kit. Over here, the next symbol you're going to see is QC, and it says 24. So the QC on this instrument will lock out if it's not run every 24 hours. And you, when you install the instrument, are going to designate a given time each day that this QC has to be run by. So once you run the QC, it will turn from red to green, like where it says red in that little LIS section over there. It will turn from red to green, and then it will also count down from 24, the amount of hours left until you have to run the QC again. So that makes it really helpful. LIS, where it says 0 there, and it's red, if that were green, we know that the LIS is connected. Because I don't have it connected to LIS here in our demo room, it's red. If I were to send patient results through to the LIS right now, or attempt to send patient results through to the LIS right now when it's disconnected, that number would go from 0 to however many results I'm trying to send through. And when I show you the result menu, I'll also show you the ability you have to manually push those results to the LIS. For example, if I were to regain connectivity, I had some LIS downtime, which unfortunately and frustratingly so happens from time to time. Here where this little question mark is in the middle, that's going to open up a handy dandy legend, which is going to basically highlight and outline all of the different indicators that you might see in the user interface. So if you're ever confused about what something might mean, then you can go here and find that out. Okay, what else do we have here on the home screen? So you can see the result there, 291. I ran my daily control just before we started the presentation here, not too long ago, back at looks like 7:13. It's an early morning for me. And we ran in duplicate. So each day we're going to run our 290 in duplicate. As you can see, I have 291. Conveniently enough, the C of A for this lot of Clinitrol 290 was 291. So we are right on the money this morning. So looking really good. This little plus or minus sign right here, this would allow me to add tests to the turntable. So like I was saying before, you don't have to batch test on this. You can continuously add samples to the turntable. So if I wanted to add a test, I would simply just hit this button. Then it would ask me where I want to put the test. As you can see up here on the top right, it's telling me to select a position. I would select the position, and then I would hit play. But we're not going to do that right now because there's some other things I want to show you before we actually demo a couple samples. So we're going to go to this menu here. This is the main menu. So you can see a few different things: calibration, results, maintenance kit, settings, diagnostic, controls log. And then on some of these buttons, you're going to see little gold keys and little silver keys. So if there is a gold and silver key, that means both operators and supervisors have access. Ooh, we have a timer on that screen, sorry. Have access to those menus. If it's just a gold key, only the supervisor has access to those menus. So how do we know who a supervisor is and who an operator is? So for that, we'll go to the settings. And then up here, you can see something that says users. So this is where you can build user profiles. And you don't necessarily have to build a user profile. You can just use the same badge at the instrument every day. And by the way, you can have badge scanning capability enabled. So here's my badge. There's a little scanner underneath here. I'm going to go ahead and scan in. And you're going to see a few different folks here. So somebody named demo, and then admin, and then service. So it's really easy from this menu to go ahead and add somebody. And we can do an ID. So maybe we'll just call this person, I don't know, Ted. And then here is a badge ID. So this is typically where you would scan in a badge. I can't reuse the same badge ID that I already did, I don't think. So we're not going to try to do that. But it's really easy to add, or in the same way, select a user and delete them from this user log. And as you can see here, there are different access levels that coordinate to those gold or silver keys that you saw on that last menu. So if there's certain things you don't want your supervisors doing, or I'm sorry, supervisors. If there's certain things you don't want your operators doing, then you can designate those permissions of these different operator profiles that you would build here in the user menu in this configuration menu. So I'm going to go ahead and scan into here. In the configuration menu here, you can see where you can designate those operator positions or operator permissions. So if you don't want them changing the language, you can deselect that, or messing with the network, or calibrating, or doing things like probe resistance, or cleaning. You only want supervisors performing these steps. You can restrict those permissions here. Okay, in this configuration menu, you're also going to see several other features that will help you lean into the value of automation on this instrument as well. The first is going to be in this testing menu. So in the testing menu, over here on the right, you can see a couple options that say number of replicates per sample or number of replicates per control. So if you're a laboratory, and most laboratories do, which is why we've added this feature to the user interface here on the OsmoPRO MAX. If you're a laboratory who's performing duplicate testing on all of your osmolality tests right now, let's say you're doing it on an Osmo 1, where you have to run each sample manually 2 times, standing in front of the instrument to run both tests. Or let's say you're doing it on the Osmo Pro, where you have to pipette into 2 cups samples from the same sample tube each time so that you can ensure you're running duplicate results. Those days are over. So you just put your primary sample tube on the instrument. Here on this menu, you're going to let the instrument know, I want to run replicates on every sample. So 2 tests for every single sample. And if the spread between those 2 samples is greater than 4 milliosmoles, do it again. So that will actually take a result that is outside of a specific spread, and after running a 3rd test, identify the outlier, and then only cross over the 2 results that are most closely associated to your LAS. So a really cool feature as well. You can do the same thing down at the bottom there for your controls. If you want a certain spread between 2 tests that are run on the same control standard, you can set that there as well. By the way, the replicates, if you would find a need to run this many replicates, can go all the way up to 10. So we can go from 1 all the way up to 10. Okay, this is this daily QC menu I was telling about. I have mine set up to be run every day at 7 a.m. You can pick whatever time you want. So that's what that looks like. And then over here, you can set different acceptance criteria for your QC. So we can say, hey, I want to issue a warning if my QC that I run is outside of 2 standard deviations or 3 standard deviations, or maybe I want to lock my user out of the instrument completely. We can actually select the stop running option and do that. These are timeouts. So when that screen timed out earlier, when I was trying to show you the menu, I inconvenienced myself with a timeout there. And then this is the badge scan mode option. So this is how I was able to log in with my badge. So when you create a user profile, instead of asking you for a password, it's just going to ask you for a badge scan. So if you have a barcode or a QR code or something on your hospital badge, you can actually use that to log in and create your user profile using that barcode or QR code on your hospital badge. So that's a configuration menu. Those are the features that are primarily going to help you take advantage of the features of automation on the instrument. I've showed you the user menu, so we're actually going to take a back out of that menu, and we're going to go back into the main menu here. You're going to see a few other things. First, we're going to go into the results menu. What's great about this instrument is that it stores up to 1,000 results and 10,000 events. So in this result log, you'll store up to 1,000 results before anything rolls over and off of the instrument. Here you're going to see this LAS button. If I wanted to, I could select some results and try to push them through to the LAS. You're also going to see the print option. So if you purchase a printer separately, because there is no built-in printer on this instrument, you can connect that to the instrument and you can print out any results or statistics for a number of results. Let's say we want to run statistics on these 2 clinitrals. Then we can hit that. And that's actually going to give me the mean, the standard deviation, and the coefficient of variation. Obviously, those results came in exactly the same. So that looks really, really good for us. If I wanted to export to our USB port, which is over here on the right side of the instrument, it would actually export any selected results in a CSV format, so Excel compatible. And then here you're going to see this button that says peer group. What's cool about that button is if you take advantage of Advanced Instruments Advanced QC Peer Group, which is a web-based platform that allows you to compare your quality control performance against peers who are also taking advantage of the Advanced QC Peer Group. Then you can automatically transmit your QC results to the peer group by selecting the results and hitting this button right here. So you don't have to manually export them into your jump drive and load them into the peer group manually. You can just go ahead and hit that button and have everything cross over automatically. And there are several different filtering options up here for how many results that you actually want to show. So you can modify all that before you transfer anything, either through the Ethernet port or through downloading onto or exporting onto an external drive. And let's say you want to find a specific sample ID, or you want to see what a specific user is up to, or you want to look at results within a certain date range, then you can very easily do that in this menu as well. So a lot of things you can do here in this result menu. Okay, and then in here, you're also going to see the controls log, which is also a very important feature. So inventory management is always a challenge in these laboratories. We have to buy a lot of reagents, a lot of controls. So it's super helpful, like a lot of those other chemistry analyzers you use, when you have an instrument that helps you keep track of what you're currently using from a control and calibration standard perspective, as well as what their expiration dates are and their lot numbers are. So you can actually designate any given control at any time as your default lot. Not only that, but I could select this and hit chart, and then I can actually see how my controls have performed. So we can actually throw the Levy-Jennings plot right up from the inventory log, from the control log. You can filter by date if you want to. Those colorful bands that you're seeing on the top and bottom are standard deviation bands, so you can see how you're performing within a certain standard deviation if you'd like to. This instrument performing really, really well. And you can actually limit the number of results you're seeing by a date range. You can also export that. It's actually going to be exported as an image file and can also be exported through the jump drive on the side of the instrument or into an external hard drive of your choice. So that's what this menu looks like. Really easy to add controls, really easy to delete controls. Super easy to select any given control and chart them so that you can see what the Levy-Jennings looks like. Okay. Last couple things I want to show you in the user interface before I run a couple samples and we kind of show you how things work. So we have the calibration menu here and we have the maintenance kit menu here. So remember, the maintenance kit is going to be run every 500 tests and the calibration is going to be run as needed, but we usually recommend every 6 months. What's cool about these features is they have step-by-step instructions that will actually walk you through what to do on screen. So I've already scanned one of the kits in before. So each time you scan into this menu, it's going to ask you to scan the UDI barcode on the side of your OsmoPRO MAX calibrator kit. Remember this kit that I showed you earlier. And then it's going to take you through some instructions on how to set up your calibration. So I'm just going to say yes. And then on the end of every calibration, it's going to ask you to run Clinitrol 290. So I'm also going to go ahead and, so you can see how this works, using the scanner underneath the top cover here, scan in my Clinitrol 290. Okay. And then we're going to go back to the screen here. So it's going to say ready. It wants me to start my calibration. So over on the left, you're going to see exactly how you need to position those ampule adapters and the ampules that coordinate to each ampule adapter. So starting from the highest level at 2000, descending down to 0, and then the 290. We're going to start running this calibration. I'm not going to do it right now. We don't have time to do a full calibration, but I just wanted to show you how easy it is, right? You don't have to go back to the user guide and think, okay, how should I set this up? Do I have to run these one at a time? Which ampule adapters do I use? You just open up the calibration menu. It shows you exactly how everything should be oriented, which adapters go into which positions. Everything's all good and super easy. Along the right, it's going to track the progress of the calibration. It's going to run 5 tests for each level. If the level passes, it's going to be a green check mark. If it fails, there's going to be a green X. A test for each standard can fail once. If it fails twice, you got to start all over again. That doesn't typically happen. Calibration usually goes really smoothly, but that's what it's going to look like over here on the right. So we're going to go ahead and back out of this because, again, we don't have time to perform a full calibration for the purposes of this demo, but that is what that looks like. And if you're curious as to what the 290 might look like in the turntable as well, you can see it here. The turntable kind of moves freely here. You can see the 20 positions, and then this little black rectangle in the back is our onboard scanner. So that's actually what's going to scan each of the tubes as they pass by that I load on. So that's exactly what I'm going to do next. I'm going to go ahead and remove my 290, and I'm going to load some, quote, patient sample tubes, unquote, which is some old water that I've had sitting around here in the demo room for quite some time. That will probably have, maybe, because it's been sitting around for a while, a little bit of osmolality. So we'll find out. So the first thing you're going to want to do with your primary sample tubes, quote unquote, primary sample tubes. And remember, these are 12 by 75, so they fit on here nicely, just like most tube diameters do, as long as they're under 100 millimeters in height. They're going to fit nicely in this turntable. You just want to make sure that barcode's facing out so that when it does pass by the scanner, it's scanned in. And I'm going to go ahead and put another one here. And remember, we have the instrument pre-programmed to run in duplicate. So for each of these tubes that I'm putting on, it's going to attempt to run 2 tests. So let's see if I can gingerly flip back and forth here. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit this play button, just like on your old Sony Walkman. Maybe I'm dating myself a little bit there. And then it's going to go ahead and start doing its thing. So the first thing it's going to do is sense for the presence of tubes in any positions. And then it's going to go through, starting from position 20 and working its way down the turntable, scanning in any positions where it identified tubes were present. So when you see number 4 come through, it's going to scan it. And then number 1's going to come through, and it's going to scan it. Okay, let's go back to our user interface here. So you're going to see the first thing that it's going to do, it's going to clean and prime the system so that it can initiate the tests, right? The most important part of these flow-through systems, just like any chemistry analyzer, is to make sure we're keeping them clean, keeping the fluidic path clear of any organic material or anything that could carry over and affect the result from one sample to the next. Super, super important. By the way, while this cleans, I can say we do have a published OsmoPRO MAX white paper. So if you're curious about how this instrument performs against maybe its predecessors like the A20 or the OsmoPRO or the Osmo One, even the 3250, all of that data is in that paper. If you're curious about any carryover concerns or any testing that's been done to ensure that we're cleaning the fluidic path properly between samples, all of that is also in the white paper as well. You can speak to your rep, they can share that information with you, or you could put in the chat, hey, I'd really love to learn more about that, and I can go ahead and send you a copy of that after the presentation as well. So as you can see, both tubes that I've put in have their positions labeled over along the right. So 1 and then 4. And then there's a -1 and -2 next to each of them because remember we pre-programmed each to run in duplicate. All the way on the right, you see the sample ID. That's where your patient accession number would be. And eventually under result, you'd see the results pop up. So each of these tests is going to take about 5 minutes. So while this first test runs, we'll tell a little story, right? So let's imagine we're in the laboratory. We've got maybe, I don't know, right now we've only got 2 samples. Let's say we've got all the positions filled up between 1 and 10. It's been a busy day of Osmos in the laboratory. And a patient comes in to the emergency department, and the emergency physician right away suspects, okay, the way this patient's presenting, I mean, clearly they're intoxicated, but this doesn't seem like alcohol. His friends and family are telling me, that he's been in recovery and he's been doing a good job and he got his hands on something. They don't know what it is. Or I don't know, this could be a number of different scenarios and stories that could basically lead the emergency physician to come to this conclusion. But let's say he suspects that this patient maybe ingested a toxic alcohol like methanol or isopropanol or even diethylene glycol, right? Antifreeze. This sometimes does happen. In the laboratory, we don't have a direct test for this. So you'd have to send it out to a specialized laboratory. We would probably have to run something like GC mass spec to identify whether or not this volatile is present in the blood, if it's still present in the blood by the time it gets to the laboratory. So because we don't have a direct test for this, what your physician is going to want to know is something called an osmolar gap. So on your chemistry analyzer, you can calculate osmolality using sodium, blood urea nitrogen, and glucose. And then it doesn't account for any volatiles like ethyl alcohol, that calculation, or like diethylene glycol or methanol or isopropanol. So what they're going to do to confirm whether or not those volatiles might be present and contributing to the measured osmolality is they're going to take the measured osmolality off this instrument and subtract that calculated osmolality from that value. If that osmolar gap, or the gap between those two results, is greater than 10, then that confirms that provider's suspicion that this patient has likely ingested a toxic alcohol. And this means they need to spring into action, right? This patient needs a drug to help them digest or help them break down any of this diethylene glycol or whatever else they may have in their bloodstream, and they need to be put on dialysis right away. A timely diagnosis and the timely support of information that you can provide your doctor around this result could mean the difference between organ damage, permanent organ damage, organ failure, or death. So this is a super, super important tool. So let's say you have all 10 positions filled up, right? You know it's going to take some time to get through all of the positions, but you don't have time to wait because you have this patient that needs a result right away. That's where this little lightning bolt stopwatch button comes in. Yep, see, we have an osmolality of 1 on that sample. That's where this little lightning bolt stopwatch button comes into play. So even though we're running a test and we're moving on to the next test in this pair of tests that's going to be run on this sample, I can hit this button at any time and it's going to ask me, oh, okay, we have a stat test. Where do you want it? And then I can say, well, we're full from 1 to 10, so I want to put it in position 12. I can go ahead and load my tube in position 12 with the barcode facing out. And then go back here and hit play. And then it's going to know as soon as it completes the test that it's currently running to ignore everything else in the routine testing queue and prioritize position 12 because we need to get that result out right away. And you can see it's popped up here in the result log along the right side of the screen. So as soon as the instrument gets a chance, when it finishes cleaning, it's going to move to that next position, scan that tube in, and start testing it. So another really cool feature on the OsmoPRO MAX that allows you to run, by the way, as many stat tests as you want. So if I get another one, I can throw that on right away. That stopwatch is still there. It'll prioritize that next test after the other stat test. So another really great feature on the OsmoPRO MAX as well. So a lot of really cool automation that you can leverage to just streamline your osmolality testing workflow. You know, we don't often think of osmolality as something we can speed up, but this instrument really reinforces our ability to just make something that maybe we saw as routine much, much easier. And you can see it actually now, just to show you, scanning in that stat sample. So there we are, indicated as stat on the user interface. It's just going to move ahead and start testing that one right away, then pick up where it left off on the other samples. All right. With that said, I think that concludes the demonstration for today. I wanted to leave a little bit time to go through the chat and answer some questions. So I'm actually going to move back to my computer where I can see what everybody's saying, if anyone's saying anything. Hopefully you guys aren't asleep. All right, so it looks like we do have a few questions. Will it only report out one result or two results when running in duplicate? Will it wait to have two results within range of each other before reporting the results to the LAS? That's the first question. So it will report both results out when running duplicate into the LAS. So you have the option to report one of those results, both of those results, or manually average the results and report the average of those results if they're within an acceptable range. We are working on, because this is actually something that's come up a couple times, a software update that will allow you to toggle in the menu the ability to automatically average two results that are within an acceptable range of each other and cross only one result over into the LAS. So if that's something you're interested in, I can definitely keep you up to date on our progress around that. We're thinking maybe a couple months as far as where we're at in the software development queue, but something that's up and coming. Okay. And then will it wait to have the two results within range? Yes. So it's not going to send anything over until it's identified two results that are within range of each other, within the range that you set. So you don't have to worry about it prematurely sending anything over. Okay, next question. If you use the setting to have the analyzer stop running test if QC is out of range, will it let the operator rerun QC if it is in? Will it let the operator continue testing? So that's a really good question. So it's actually only going to stop the operator from testing patient samples. You can continue to rerun QC. Like, for example, if your QC is out, maybe because, and by the way, strongly advise against this. Every 290 should be a single use only, especially with this instrument. So strongly advise against this. But for example, if they had a 290 sitting around that they tried to reuse, maybe the QC was out because of evaporation, it will still let you run a new vial of 290 to rerun the QC, but it won't let you run any patient tests until your QC has passed. So that's how that feature works. Okay, how long does it take to run one sample for routine and stat? So regardless of the sample type, it's about 5 minutes a test on board the instrument. Again, it's a little bit longer than the Osmo One or the Osmo Pro, for example, but the advantage of the Osmo Pro Max is that you don't have to stand in front of the instrument and manually do anything to run the test. So even though it takes about a minute or so longer, you can load as many samples as you want onto the turntable and just walk away. So you don't have to stand around babysitting the test and, you know, basically take up all the time you could be doing other things, just running osmolality testing. So that's really the value that the automation of the Osmo Pro Max provides. But yeah, 5-minute test turnaround. All right. Can you run a track within the software? Can you run? Oh, I'm sorry. Can you? I thought this was like an automation question, like can you run it on a track? And we're not quite there yet. That's something we want to do in the future, which would be really cool. But anyways, I digress. I'm just having a hard time reading this morning. Can you run and track within the software a third-party QC? So yes, you can run third-party QC, especially for our European audience. I know that, like for example, UCAS will sometimes recommend this, although it's not a requirement. We do strongly recommend using our protanol and renal QC for a number of different reasons. Like I said before, much tighter ranges and results that you could actually expect to get from real patients. So relevant in terms of the type of results that you're getting to assess the performance of your instrument. But can you run and track within the software a third-party QC? Yes. But instead of having an ampule adapter for that QC, you would just have to aliquot that out into a tube or a sample cup, and then you'd have to manually input the name of each level of QC that you're running. So it's not something that you could, like, for example, leverage that peer QC button for. You would have to manually either export your QC results into a jump drive, load them up into your computer so you can send them off to maybe some other QC management software that you're using, or manually just input them from a printout or a screenshot on the instrument. So not as accommodating to use the third-party QC, but still possible. Okay. From Evan, you said each maintenance kit comes with tubing. Do instrument installs come with user trainings, or is that super easy to change between 500 tests? So first question. So you can have training done at the time of install. So it's a service that you can purchase when you're quoted for your instrument. I highly recommend it because there are all those little features that I just showed you and different steps within the process that I showed you. It's helpful to get training for. But what's cool about this instrument, for example, for that 500 test maintenance, is once you scan in the kit and you initiate the process, there's actually step-by-step video instructions on board the instrument. Again, for the purposes of this demo, I couldn't go through and show you that, but I am developing a little video that will be ready very soon that I can send to those who are interested so you can actually see how this process is carried out. But it does make it really, really easy. So it will tell you with pictures, step-by-step, frame-by-frame, which step you should be doing, how to do it, how certain things should be positioned within the cover, on the tube holder on the side of the instrument, so on and so forth. So it is super easy to change between 500 tests. Shouldn't take any tech more than about 10 minutes to do the whole thing, leading up to the enzymatic cleaner. Once you run the enzymatic cleaner through the instrument, that process itself takes about 15 to 20 minutes just to make sure everything's cleared out, and then you're good to go. Okay, any calibration is still required after 500 tests? Nope. As long as your QC is in and your temperature doesn't change significantly and you haven't moved the instrument anywhere, you're good to go. So we recommend 6-month cycle. You can actually pre-program reminders into the software as well to say at a 6-month mark, hey, you should probably think about performing calibration, or even at the 12-month mark. But it's really only required when your QC calls for it. So as long as your QC is performing well, there's no need to calibrate. Okay, any additional calibration? Hey, there you go. Follow-up question there. So any additional calibrations beside QC failures? The ones I kind of brushed over before are temperature changes. So if the temperature in your laboratory changes more than 5 degrees C and it's consistently at that changed temperature, then you're going to want to recalibrate the instrument. Because this is a freezing point depression measurement, temperature variations do affect the consistency in measurement. So if it's a significant change in temperature, you should consider recalibrating. How are you going to know? Our instrument has a sensor. It's very good at letting you know if that range in temperature has been breached. But other than that, I just recommend to continue doing the QC monitoring that you do in the laboratory, taking record of temperature and humidity and all that stuff that most labs do on a regular basis. It's always fun to be the guy walking around with the clipboard and the pen, checking off all of that. And aside from that, when you power down the instrument or move it, or when any maintenance is performed on the instrument outside of wear and tear. So that 500 test maintenance, we would consider wear and tear or routine maintenance. But if you have a field service engineer come in to adjust a probe or work on the alignment of the instrument or change out a component or something like that, they'll typically perform the calibration for you, but you're definitely going to want to perform a calibration after any major maintenance event as well. So that's really the only time outside of QC failures. Does it have a printer? No built-in printer on this instrument, but it is compatible with a printer that we sell separately. Okay, QC is required after 500 tests? Yes. So QC we require every single day, at least the Clinitrol 290. Is required every single day on this instrument. But yes, you'd have to run it after 500 tests as well. What would happen if somebody accidentally ran a sample with the cap still on? The probe is always sensing, looking for a liquid level. When it bumps into something hard, it'll throw an error, and it won't be a fatal error. So it will actually just tell you, hey, I bumped into something. We have a probe crash error. We're just going to move on to the next sample. Is that okay? And then you just hit yes, and I'll move on to the next one. So it's not like some other chemistry analyzers I've used in the past. I've been there where I've left the caps on and it stabs through the rubber part of the tube and causes all kinds of issues. It's not going to be like that. So not a big deal if the probe does bump into a cap. You just uncap it and run the sample again. Good question, though. Yeah, for those of you, you would never want to hire me as a tech because I had a hematology analyzer on one side of me, a chemistry analyzer on the other side. I chemistry analyzer, and then for some reason I uncapped the tube. I put it in my hematology analyzer, and when it went to mix it, it made a mess. So that's my most stressful laboratory story, I think, that I can think back on. How do you replace a probe if it is bent? That's going to require a field service engineering visit. So typically when the probe bumps into something, it's not going to bend because it's not coming down with enough force. But I will say sometimes maybe from attempting to remove the turntable when the probe is sampling, or attempting to get in there and actually move the gantry or the probe with your hands or something like that, that's very easily going to bend the probe. So you want to make sure you avoid doing anything like that. But any bent probe will require a field service engineering visit for repair. Okay, is the barcode scanner similar to the A20? This is, I believe, a new piece of hardware. So it shouldn't be similar to the A20, and there's two separate barcode scanners, one on board for the tubes you're loading onto the turntable, which also has a sensing mechanism underneath, and then one under the top cover of the instrument where you're actually going to scan your badge or any of the UDI codes on any of the consumables. Does the freezing chamber and impactor ever need extra clean like the old osmometers? So what's interesting about the OsmoPRO MAX, even though it leverages freezing point depression technology to freeze the sample and take the freezing point plateau measurement, it does not use an impactor. So I don't know if you could hear because I'm talking through my microphone here, but when you run each test, let's see where we're at with the current test. Or did we run everything already? Nope, we're still on the current test. Okay, so when you run each test, as it completes the test after it pipettes, you can actually see it pipetting here. If you want to take a look, you can see the little probe coming down into the tube and aspirating the sample, or the water in this case, which does have osmolality 1. So who knows what's been happening in there while it's been sitting around in the laboratory, in the demo room. But as we run each test, when it takes the measurement, you're not going to hear that loud banging noise that you did on the Osmo 1 or Osmo Pro, because there is actually no physical stimulus to nucleation. It uses a different technology for nucleation. So it uses a different technology to freeze the sample after it's been super cooled really quickly, so we can get that freezing point plateau and take that measurement really accurately. So no more solenoid, no more need for maintenance on that impactor or solenoid. So yeah, that's another really great question. How do we get the white paper? I will send it to you. How long does the analysis take per sample? So each test takes about 5 minutes. So again, about 5 minutes a test, but unlike the Osmo 1, unlike the Osmo Pro, you're not batch testing. You're not running one test at a time. So you're loading your tubes onto the turntable, hitting play, and then walking away. All right, a lot of really good questions. Super engaged audience. But yes, Connie, I can definitely send you the paper. Okay, so we're at 9:25, at least for me over here, on the East Coast of the United States. Okay, another question. When storing QC, how can we eliminate evaporation as much as possible when using the adapters? So if you're concerned about evaporation of the vials that are put onto the turntable, you can pipette them out into cups. So those small volume insert cups that I showed you before, and manually input each of the results into the cups. I will say that we do for all osmometers, evaporation is kind of a weak point for all osmolality testing. So I will say that we are working on, just like we have for our Clinitrol 290 controls and the rest of our controls, ampuled standards for protanol and renol. So that is something we're working on. But in the meantime, we were able to see that stability improved much more for protanol and renol when you're actually aliquoting those into the small volume inserts for each QC run. Ooh, Connie asked, do I need to run enzymatic cleaner every day? And I can't hide my excitement because I'm super happy to say and you should all be, anybody who has the instrument will be receiving an announcement today. No, you no longer have to run enzymatic cleaner every day, considering you have a new lot of the Max 500 kit. And the reason I say that is because within the new lots of the OsmoPRO MAX maintenance kit that we're sending out, the Max 500 kit, we have a reformulated system fluid. So we've actually upgraded the surfactant in that system fluid, so it maintains a much cleaner fluidic path without any user intervention at all. So moving forward, if you do order this instrument, you're going to get a new lot of the OsmoPRO MAX maintenance kit, which will have the reformulated system fluid, meaning you will not have to run enzymatic cleaner every day. You only have to run it every 500 tests as part of the 500 test maintenance process. So sorry, I got really excited about that because because that's an announcement that's going out today, and that's been something we've been working really hard on ever since launching the instrument. We wanted to do away with that, make things much easier to use, and kind of reduce that extra time and spend for you in your laboratory. Well, it's sample past 500 tests if you're in the middle of a run. So it will continue to sample past 500 tests. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was like a data overlap question. Okay, will it sample past 500 tests? No, it will only run as many tests as you have system fluid for, and you'll only ever have enough system fluid with each kit for at least 500 tests. So no, unfortunately, there's no buffer. So yeah, you'll have to pay attention to that little counter in the bottom left-hand side of the screen. So we're at 378 right now on this one. Okay. Yeah, so it looks like that notification went out today. So somebody very kindly put the message from the notification into the chat. So for those of you who are interested, you can find it there. But for those of you who would like to know more, or if you're thinking about purchasing a kit, I can also send you the notification. But in every Max 500 kit that you purchase moving forward, for those of you who maybe already have this instrument at your site and are just tuning in to learn a little bit more or get additional training on the instrument, for every Max 500 kit that you order moving forward, a letter is going to be contained in that kit notifying you of this change and the need for enzymatic cleaning frequency. And it's also going to outline all of the old Max 500 kit lots that will still require enzymatic cleaning. So again, because we reformulated the system fluid, anything that we manufactured up until the current lot that we began distributing on September 26th is still going to require enzymatic cleaning. But if you want to move forward with the new lot, then you can go ahead and move forward with that and won't need to perform enzymatic cleaning anymore either. Okay, so from your experience, what's the #1 tip for keeping this instrument running smoothly? I would say use a fresh vial of Clinitrol 290 every morning. You don't want to have any issues with QC drift due to evaporation. You don't want to parafilm those 290s. This isn't me trying to sell you more Clinitrol 290. I assure you, evaporation is a problem for all osmolality testing, for all osmometers. You do not want to reuse something that's ampuled in a glass ampule ever. Just use those one a day, each day. Use a fresh Clinitrol 290 vial each day. So that's my first tip. And then my other tip is, I guess, just be kind to your instrument. It's a pretty robust instrument. So as long as you don't try to challenge it with any sample types that aren't appropriate or use any anticoagulants that aren't compatible, then it should work really, really well for you. As long as you're using a serum and plasma sample that isn't, sodium citrate, something meant for coag, or like a boric acid urine sample meant for micro or something like that, the instrument's going to behave really, really well for you. Okay, we're right at 9:30. Evan, I will send you some materials. UMass Memorial. I'm a Central Massachusetts guy myself, so I can either send you materials, I can bring them over myself. Okay, how often is the PM on this analyzer? We recommend an annual preventative maintenance visit, and we definitely recommend moving forward with one of our service contract offerings so we can go in and do the PM on a scheduled basis each year, and then also be available if anything happens. Something goes wrong in the middle of the night, what's the first thing you would check before calling tech support? All right, so we're a little bit over, but I'll show you this because it is a really good question. So you're going to want to check the events log, which you're going to find. Whoop. So we're in the middle of a run, so I can't show you that right now. But you're going to want to check the events log, which again, we store up to 1,000 results in 10,000 events. So you're going to want to go into the events log, which is present in the diagnostic menu. I'm not able to show you right now in the middle of this run, but if you had an instrument issue, I don't think the instrument would be running. So you would go in and check the events log so that you can basically export that events log into an external jump drive and then load it onto your computer so that you can send that along to our tech support team so they can actually see what the instrument is telling you and what things have gone wrong or right, or what things the instrument is struggling with. So that's going to be the most important thing to do. Or if you just get access to the events log when you're on the phone with the tech support agent, that's super helpful as well. But obviously it helps to have data in the hands of the tech support experts so that we can help troubleshoot you through any issues you might be having. Okay, so right at 9:32, if anybody else has any other questions they want to ask, I love this. You guys are super engaged. This has been really fun. It's never fun when you come back to answer questions and everything's blank and everyone's quiet. So I really appreciate you guys being so engaged. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to email me, give me a call, or contact your local representative. We can put you in touch with the right people. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And for those of you who asked for training materials and papers, I can definitely send them your way. If anybody else would like those, please feel free to put that in the chat or reach out and request more information, and we can certainly support you around that as well. But thank you, everybody, so much for your time today. I really appreciate you tuning in, taking time out of your busy days to learn more about this pretty neat instrument, in my opinion. And it's wonderful virtually meeting you all. You have a good rest of the day.